I was sitting quietly at the table next to my 7-year-old granddaughter at my daughter's second wedding. Suddenly, the little girl grabbed my rough hand tightly and whispered, "Grandpa, I want to leave right now." I asked her, "What's wrong, baby girl?" She trembled and replied, "Grandpa, you didn't look under the table, did you?" I slowly lowered my gaze and froze. I took my granddaughter's hand and we got up in silence. "I'm so glad you're here. If you're watching this video, please like and subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my story of revenge from. I want to know how far it has reached." I was sitting in the middle of the wedding hall, a ballroom aglow with candlelight, right next to my little granddaughter Jada, the girl I love more than life itself. Today was the wedding of my daughter, Kendra, to her second husband, Byron. My little girl, Jada, was busy brushing the hair of her favorite doll back and forth across the immaculate white tablecloth. Her clear, brown eyes seemed immersed in a world of her own, where the noise of the adults around her didn't exist. I looked at her, and my heart softened. I carefully straightened the tiny ribbon in her braids, a gesture as gentle as if I were caressing the memory of her father Jerome, whose every tender smile and strong handshake I still remember as if it were yesterday. The soft melody of the jazz band filled the room, blending with the murmur of conversations and the clinking of wine glasses. The ballroom was decorated with impressive luxury, with arrangements of pristine white roses on every table and the candle light reflected on the gleaming silver plates. I looked up, searching for Kendra. She was busy going from table to table, toasting to thank the guests with a radiant smile that seemed to want to hide the emptiness I knew she still carried in her heart since Jerome left us. In the distance, Byron, my daughter's new husband, stunning in his custom tuxedo, posed for photos with his fraternity brothers. His smile was perfect, white and gleaming, without a single cloud, as if the whole world belonged to him. I looked at him and felt something strange in my chest, a weird sensation, a tightening in my gut that old men get when danger is near, but I tried to ignore it, telling myself I was just being an overly protective father. Waiters moved gracefully between the tables, serving more wine, clearing empty plates, and arranging the napkins. An elderly couple sitting at our table turned to me with a kind smile. "How fast Jada is growing up. How old is she now, Silas?" I smiled and replied in a soft, deep voice, "She just turned 7. Time flies." Then I turned to cut a small piece of cake to give to Jada. The girl looked up, her eyes shining with gratitude, but she immediately lowered her head again and continued playing with her doll as if only that toy was the place where she felt safe. Suddenly, Jada stopped. Her little hands stopped brushing the doll, and her round eyes looked at me with a seriousness that was not normal for her. I was a little startled. A bad feeling ran through my body. She grabbed my hand tightly. Her little fingers were ice cold. In an urgent voice, she whispered, "Grandpa, I want to leave right now." Her voice trembled as if she were holding back a fear she couldn't explain. My heart raced. I leaned over her and put a big hand on her shoulder. "What's wrong, my angel? Tell Grandpa what it is." Jada shuddered, pressing her lips together. And then she whispered so softly that I had to lean my ear closer to hear her. "Grandpa, you didn't look under the table, did you?" Her words were like a cold knife that went through my chest. A terrible anguish began to grow inside me, making it hard to breathe. I tried to stay calm and stroked her hair, but her gaze, the panicked look of a girl of just 7, prevented me from ignoring it. "It's okay, my love. Let your grandpa look," I said, trying to make my voice sound calm to soothe her, although I felt my own heart was pounding. Carefully, I lifted the edge of the white tablecloth and looked into the dark space under the table, where the wooden legs of the chairs and Jada's little patent leather shoes were swinging, and then I saw it. A small piece of paper folded in 4, lying there, right next to Jada's chair. It was so small that it was almost lost in the darkness. But its presence chilled my blood. Jada huddled against me, her little hand gripping my arm as if seeking refuge. I felt her agitated breathing. Every tremor seemed to tell me that something was very wrong. I crouched down completely, and with a trembling hand, I picked up the paper. The people around us were still laughing and toasting, but at that instant my entire world shrank until it was just me, Jada, and that damned paper in my hand. I unfolded it. The dim candle light on the table was enough to read the scribbled words. Table 8. Add shrimp to the child serving. A few words, but they were like a direct punch to my heart. I felt the blood turn to ice in my veins and the air get stuck in my chest. Jada is severely allergic to shrimp, something my whole family knows perfectly well. A single piece of shrimp would be enough to put her life in danger, to close her throat in minutes. Who could have written this? Who could be so cruel? Right on my daughter's wedding day. I squeezed Jada's hand, feeling her little fingers tremble in mine. I stood up abruptly, not caring about the surprised looks from the people around me. The elderly couple nearby stopped talking and looked at me with concern. I hugged Jada with all my strength, as if I feared she would vanish if I let her go. The laughter and music continued, but for me, everything had become a heavy, suffocating silence. Memories of other times flooded my mind, taking me out of that gleaming wedding hall and back to the years when our family was whole. I once thought my daughter's home would always be filled with laughter. But life, like a sudden gust of wind, extinguished that flame of happiness, leaving me with scars that would never heal. I remember Jerome, my first son-in-law, like I remember the morning sunlight streaming through the window at dawn. He was a good man, a hard-working man. He always made me feel like I had gained a son, not just lost a daughter. Jerome never raised his voice, never did anything that worried me. He was one of those people who just by looking at them made you feel at peace. I still remember those very windy afternoons in the suburbs when I would arrive at Kendra and Jerome's little house. The laughter of Jada, who had just started to walk, echoed in the backyard as she chased a colorful rubber ball. Jerome would be on the porch fixing something or grilling, smiling as he watched his daughter. "Pops, try the ribs I made. See what you think," he would often say to me, his voice full of pride as he placed the warm plate in front of me. I would sit there eating and talking with him about simple things while Jada crawled on the floor clinging to an old stuffed bear. But the most beautiful and also the most painful memory is the night Jada became very sick. She had a very high fever. Her little body burned and her eyes could barely open with no strength left even to cry. Jerome held her while tears rolled silently down his cheeks. "Pops, I'm so scared," he whispered, his voice trembling. I sat next to him, taking turns to place damp cloths on her forehead, trying to calm him. "Don't worry, son. The girl is strong. She's going to be okay." But inside, the worry weighed on me like a stone. I stayed up with Jerome until dawn, when the first rays of sun appeared, and Jada's fever finally broke, and she fell asleep in her father's arms. Jerome turned to me, his eyes red, but with a faint smile. "Thank you, Pops. Without you, I don't know what I would have done at that moment." I just took his hand and squeezed it tightly, as if I wanted to tell him that I would always be there for him and for Jada. I thought that this little family would be happy forever, like a song that never ends. But then, one fateful afternoon, everything fell apart. The phone rang while I was fixing the sink in the kitchen. The cold voice of a police officer came through the line. "Mr. Williams, we regret to inform you that there has been an accident." I don't remember how I finished hearing the sentence. I just know that my hands were shaking so much that I dropped the wrench on the floor and it clanged loudly. Jerome was gone in an instant when a truck that lost control hit his car on the highway outside the city. I stood there paralyzed, feeling the world crumble in front of me. Jerome's funeral was on a day of torrential rain. The drops fell non-stop as if the sky was also crying for him. Jada, who was only 4 years old then, was in my arms, confused, looking at everyone with her innocent eyes, not understanding what was happening. "Grandpa, where is my daddy?" she asked in her little voice. I hugged her tightly, swallowing my tears, and whispered, "Your daddy is in a very beautiful place, my love." But inside I felt shattered. Kendra, my daughter, collapsed in front of the coffin, her shoulders shaking, and she couldn't say a word. I knew she was trying to be strong, but her gaze was empty, as if a part of her soul had gone with Jerome. After that tragedy, Kendra changed completely. She buried herself in work. She would leave home very early and wouldn't return until Jada was already asleep. I understood that she was running away, trying to fill that immense void in her heart with endless days of work. But Jada, my poor baby girl, suffered the most. She started talking less. Her gaze was often sad, as if she was waiting for a miracle that would bring her father back. I became her only support. I took her to school every morning and sat by her bed every night to rock her. "Grandpa, tell me a story about my daddy," she would often ask me. And I would tell them to her in a choked voice, talking about the times Jerome sang to her to sleep, how he cut her fruit into little pieces to make her his favorite dessert. Each story was an attempt to keep Jerome's image alive in Jada's mind and in my heart. Tyrone, a young man I had taken in years ago like an adopted son, also became an essential part of those days. With his warm heart and skilled hands, he would come to the house often, bringing coloring books or cookies he had bought. Tyrone loved Jada as if she were his own little niece. He would carry her, teach her to read, or sit for hours with her at the table to help her with her clumsy drawings. "Look, Jada, your house turned out prettier than mine," he would say, laughing in his deep, comforting voice. But sometimes I would catch Tyrone looking at Kendra when she entered the house in silence after a long day of work. It was a deep look that contained something more than a simple sibling affection. I saw it, but I decided not to say anything. Maybe I was afraid that if I brought up the subject, I would break the fragile stability of what was left of our family. Kendra's house slowly became devoid of laughter. But thanks to Tyrone and Jada, the family flame remained lit, even if it was weak. I did everything possible to keep that flame from going out. But in the depths of my heart, I knew that both Kendra and I lived with wounds that had never healed. Every time I saw Jada sleeping, I saw Jerome's features on her little face, and my heart would ache again. The memory of that afternoon is still as clear in my mind as if time had not passed. I was sitting in my small living room listening to the sparrows singing in the yard with a heart full of mixed feelings. It was the first time my daughter Kendra was bringing Byron home to introduce him. I tried to open my heart. I tried to see this man through the eyes of a father who wants his daughter to find happiness again after so much pain. But deep down, I couldn't shake a feeling of unease like a cold wind that made me shiver. That afternoon, Kendra arrived later than usual. I was in the kitchen preparing the gumbo that Jada loves so much when I heard the door open. Kendra came in with a strange glow on her face. Her eyes lit up as they were in her youth when she used to talk about Jerome with a passion she couldn't hide. "Dad," she said in a choked voice, leaning against the doorframe, "I want you to meet someone." I stopped what I was doing and looked at her, feeling a bit of nervousness. "Someone special?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Kendra smiled, a smile I hadn't seen in a long time. "Yes, you're going to like him very much," she said, full of confidence. I nodded. I wiped my hands on my apron, trying to hide the worry that was starting to grow in me. After Jerome, I wasn't sure anyone could fill the void he left, not only for Kendra, but also for Jada and for me. That night, Byron appeared. He entered my house in an expensive suit, his hair perfectly trimmed, and a smile that showed too many teeth. That smile, I must admit, was charming, as if he had rehearsed it to please anyone. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Williams," he said in a smooth voice, offering a hand that felt too soft. I shook it, returned his smile, invited him in, and served him a drink. "Your house is so cozy," Byron said as his eyes scanned the family photos hanging on the wall where there was one of Jerome hugging a very tiny Jada. I nodded and thanked him, but his eyes lingered on that photo longer than I would have liked, and I wasn't sure if I liked the look in them. It wasn't respect. It was annoyance. Dinner went on in an atmosphere that I tried to make as friendly as possible. I placed the dishes I had prepared all afternoon on the table. Spicy gumbo, cornbread, and fresh greens, Jada's favorite meal. Kendra sat next to Byron, her eyes never leaving him. Her happiness was visible in every gesture. Dad, Byron works in finance downtown. He's very successful at what he does, she said, her voice full of pride. Byron smiled. He tasted the gumbo with a delicate but calculated movement. Mr. Williams, this is delicious. You have to give me the recipe, he said, giving me a friendly look that didn't reach his eyes. I smiled and responded politely, but a small part of me remained uneasy. There was something about the way he spoke, the way he laughed, that made me feel like I was watching a very well-staged play. Jada, my granddaughter, was sitting at the head of the table, strangely quiet. She, who normally wouldn't stop talking about school, that night just picked at her food without lifting her head once. I noticed that she was avoiding Byron's gaze as if she was trying to hide in a safe corner. Byron leaned over, took a candy bar from his pocket, and placed it in front of Jada with a radiant smile. This is for you. It's very good, Jada, he said in a voice as sweet as if he were trying to win a client over. But Jada remained still, her little hands gripping her silverware, and then she simply turned her face away without touching the candy. I saw a flash of fear in her eyes and felt as if my heart would shrink. Kendra frowned, about to scold her daughter. Jada, what's wrong with you? Byron is giving you a treat. I quickly intervened. It's nothing. She's probably a little tired. Leave her be, Kendra. Kendra sighed, but didn't say anything else and turned to serve Byron more wine as if she wanted to lighten the mood. Tyrone, my adopted son, was also at dinner. He sat across from me, eating in silence, but I noticed how his gaze darkened when Byron took Kendra's hand under the table. Tyrone has always been a very observant man, and I know he loves Kendra like a sister, but sometimes I wonder if that feeling isn't deeper. When Byron took Kendra's hand, Tyrone's hand stopped over his glass, and I saw his fingers tighten a little. He didn't say anything. He just lowered his head and continued eating, but that silence was heavier than any words. I wanted to ask him. I wanted to understand what was making him sad, but I knew it wasn't the right time. After dinner, Byron insisted on helping, but in a way that felt like he was taking over. Mr. Williams, let me handle this, you rest, he said with overflowing enthusiasm. I reluctantly agreed and watched him go into the kitchen. For a moment, I thought, this man seems very caring. But then, when I went out into the living room, I saw Jada sitting, drawing with her little hands clutching a crayon. Byron approached and sat down next to her, speaking low. You draw so well, Jada. What is it? Let me see. But Jada immediately let go of the pencil and leaned back with an expression of distrust, as if he were a threat. Byron glanced at me and quickly forced a smile, as if to cover up the awkward moment. What a shy girl, he said in the same smooth voice. But I saw something strange flash in his eyes. Disgust. Kendra, meanwhile, didn't seem to notice anything out of the ordinary. She was busy serving more wine, telling funny anecdotes from work, and laughing loudly every time Byron told a joke. The introduction ended with my daughter completely satisfied, seeing Byron off at the door with her eyes fixed on him as if there was no one else in the world. I stood there watching them walk away with a strange feeling in my heart, as if something wasn't quite right. Time passed and Byron gradually became a part of our lives. One weekend morning, with the bright sun flooding the living room through the windows, I was fixing a lamp when Byron appeared, smiling from ear to ear. Mr. Williams, I want to take Jada to the park today. Is that okay? He asked, his voice full of enthusiasm. I looked at Jada, who was on the floor playing with her blocks, her face expressionless. Of course, I'm sure she'd love it, I replied, forcing a smile. Even though I felt a little doubt inside, Kendra had gone to work, and I thought maybe a little fresh air would do Jada good. Byron took Jada's hand and led her toward the door while I watched them go with a strange heaviness in my heart. When they returned, Byron came in with a triumphant smile. She had so much fun. She wouldn't stop going down the slide, and she even asked for another ice cream, he recounted, his voice full of excitement. But when I looked at Jada, I saw that her dress was dirty with some dried dirt stains on the pink fabric that I had ironed myself that morning. She was silent with her doll in her hand without saying a word about her outing. "Did you have fun, my girl?" I asked, crouching down to stroke her hair. She just nodded slightly, looking away. I wanted to ask her more to know why she was so quiet, but Byron intervened with his always smooth voice. "I already told you, Mr. Williams. She loved it." I nodded, but inside me, a small piece of the puzzle of doubt began to form. On another occasion, while Kendra was at work, Byron showed up unannounced. I was in the kitchen preparing lunch when I heard him talking to Jada in the living room. At first, his voice was soft, but suddenly I heard a harsh phrase. "Stay still, Jada. Don't make a mess. You're a big girl now, but you still act like a baby." I stopped dead in my tracks, my hands still over the vegetables I was chopping, and a chill ran through my body. I came out of the kitchen, and instantly Byron changed his tone, becoming as sweet as if nothing had happened. "Our Jada is so clever. Look at the tall tower she built," he said, pointing to the blocks the girl was playing with a radiant smile. But Jada just pressed her lips together and looked at me as if asking for help. I tried to smile and said, "Yes, she's very skilled," but inside the unease was starting to grow, like a small thorn digging into my heart. I tried to calm myself. Surely he's not used to children. Anyone is a bit clumsy at first. Jada's 7th birthday is a memory I will never forget. Tyrone, my adopted son, spent all morning grilling and setting up decorations. When he arrived with the cake and placed it on the table with its candles lit, Jada shouted with joy. Her eyes lit up for the first time in months. "Uncle Tyrone, this is my favorite cake," she exclaimed, running to hug him. He smiled, stroked her hair, and told her tenderly, "I made it for you, little bit. Eat a lot." I watched them with a warm heart, feeling that the family flame was rekindled. Byron was also there, but he only clapped in a forced way, standing in a corner with a weary smile. His only gift for Jada was an indifferent pat on the shoulder and a happy birthday champ. I saw how Jada shrank a little, avoiding his gaze, and my heart ached again. I wanted to say something, but I stayed quiet, telling myself not to get too involved. Another time, Kendra took Byron and Jada to the grocery store. I stayed home, but when they returned, I heard Byron complaining in an irritated tone. Jada dropped a whole bag of candy at the checkout, and I had to pay for it. What a clumsy girl. Kendra frowned and turned to scold her daughter. "Jada, you're a big girl now. You have to be more careful." I saw Jada lower her head with her hands intertwined, and her eyes sought mine as if asking for help. I quickly approached and put a hand on her shoulder. "Don't worry, baby. It was just some candy." But inside, I couldn't stop wondering why Byron got so angry so easily with a child. Why couldn't he be as gentle as Jerome had been? One afternoon when I went to pick up Jada from school, her teacher took me aside and said in a low but concerned voice, "Mr. Williams, lately Jada has been talking less and seems very withdrawn. Is something happening at home?" I froze, but I tried to downplay it. "I'm sure it's just the changes, Mrs. Davis. Don't worry." But on the way home, Jada tugged on my shirt and said in a trembling voice, "Grandpa, I don't want to go home with Mr. Byron." I stopped and knelt down to look into her clear eyes, my heart feeling squeezed. "Why do you say that, my love?" "Mr. Byron loves you," I said. But as soon as I said it, I knew I was wrong. Jada shook her head with firm determination in her gaze. "No, Grandpa. He doesn't love me." I stroked her hair, trying to calm her, but inside I couldn't deny that the girl was telling the truth. Tyrone, who was nearby working on a car in the driveway when we got back, had heard everything. He turned away in silence, but I saw how his shoulders moved slightly, as if he were holding back a sigh. All those loose pieces, all those little signs. I had seen them, but I had chosen to ignore them. And so the day of my daughter's wedding arrived. That afternoon, the golden sun streamed through the large windows, bathing the ballroom in a radiant light, as if wanting to celebrate my daughter's happy day. I was sitting at table number 8 next to my granddaughter, Jada, and Tyrone. Jada was playing with her doll, whispering a soft song. I looked at her and my heart filled with tenderness. Tyrone, in a simple suit, was sitting on the other side, leaning over from time to say something in Jada's ear with a smile as sweet as the morning sun. "Eat another little piece of bread, kiddo," he said, breaking off a small piece for her. I smiled at the sight, feeling a little comfort in my heart. Although our family had gone through so much pain, the presence of Tyrone and Jada was always the fire that warmed my soul. Kendra, my daughter, dressed in an elegant gown, was walking between the tables, toasting with relatives. Her face was overflowing with happiness. Her radiant smile seemed to want to erase the dark years that followed Jerome's death. I looked at her, feeling a mix of pride and sadness. I wanted to believe that she had found a new happiness, that Byron would give her a new home. But every time my gaze met Byron's, who was laughing loudly in front of the cameras, never letting go of his drink, I felt a small thorn digging into my heart. His smile was too perfect, like a carefully placed mask. The soft melody of the jazz band played, blending with the lively conversations of the guests. The waiters moved discreetly, serving appetizers, crispy crackers, an aromatic cheese dip, and plates of fresh shrimp elegantly decorated. I noticed that Jada only took a cracker and then carefully pushed the shrimp plate away. I frowned and asked her in a low voice, "Don't you like this, my love?" The girl shook her head, looking away as if she were hiding something. I wanted to ask her more, but a close relative interrupted, saying cheerfully, "And Jada is behaving well, Silas. Look how big she's gotten." I smiled and replied, "She's a smart little lady now." But inside, I couldn't help but worry. Jada had never refused food in such a strange way, but then again, she knew about her allergy. In the distance, I saw Byron's gaze turn to our table. The smile on his lips seemed to tighten for a second, just enough for no one to notice before he turned to continue toasting with another guest. I tried to dismiss my uneasiness, telling myself I was overthinking, but then everything changed in an instant. Jada, who was still playing with her doll, pushed it too hard, and the toy rolled onto the floor. The girl quickly crouched down to pick it up, but I saw her freeze, her eyes wide, fixed on something under the table. I leaned over to ask her what was wrong when Jada pulled out a small piece of paper folded in 4 with trembling hands and a pale face. He immediately clung to my hand and whispered urgently, "Grandpa, let's go. Please, let's go now." My heart started pounding as if it wanted to jump out of my chest. "What's wrong, my girl?" I asked, trying to stay calm. But Jada's panicked look prevented me from doing so. Trembling, she repeated that question that chilled my blood. "You didn't look under the table, did you?" His words were like a cold knife that paralyzed me. I crouched down, lifted the white tablecloth, and my eyes scanned the dark space under the table. The little paper was lying next to his chair, a harmless object but full of menace. I picked it up with trembling hands, feeling the world shrink around me, leaving only Jada, me, and that damned paper. I unfolded it. The candlelight was enough to read the scribbled words, "Table 8, add shrimp to the child serving." A few words, but they were like an electric shock that ran through my entire body. I subconsciously crumpled the paper in my hand. The music, the laughter, everything around me seemed to sink into an abyss from which I couldn't escape. Byron, in his expensive tuxedo, continued to laugh in a corner of the ballroom, raising his glass to toast with a guest, as if nothing in the world could worry him. Kendra was busy taking photos with her friends with a radiant smile that seemed to confirm that this was the happiest day of her life. But for me, everything in that ballroom was a farce, a curtain that hid the terrible truth I had just discovered. I squeezed the paper tightly, feeling it burn my skin. Jada, the granddaughter I loved more than my own life, had almost become the victim of an evil plot, right on her mother's wedding day. I turned to Tyrone, who was sitting next to Jada. His eyes were filled with concern when he saw my expression. Take care of Jada, please, I said, trying to stay calm, although I knew I couldn't hide the tremor in my voice. Tyrone nodded, pulling Jada closer to him and hugging her tightly like a protective shield. Where are you going, Pops? He asked me in a low voice, but full of anguish. I just shook my head without answering because I didn't even know what I was going to do next. I quickly went out into the hallway, my legs heavy, as if they were carrying lead, but with my heart pounding, urging me to act. Near the bar, I saw a group of waiters chatting. Their laughter sounded like a painful contrast to the storm that was raging inside me. I recognized Leon, the young man who had brought the food to our table several times. He had a kind face and a friendly smile, but at that moment, I couldn't think about that. I walked straight up to him, put the paper in his face, and asked in a firm voice, "Do you know who sent this paper?" Leon looked at the paper and his face changed instantly. His carefree smile turned into an expression of panic. "My God, this is my paper," he stammered, his hands trembling as if he wanted to snatch it from me. "A man gave it to me, and I accidentally dropped it when I was carrying the tray." His words were like a ray of light in the midst of confusion, but they also agitated me even more. "Who gave it to you?" I insisted, almost shouting, completely losing my composure. Leon took a step back, confused. "I don't know his name, sir. He was the groom. He just told me to give it to the chef. The paper didn't say who sent it, but he gave me money." Rage exploded inside me like a burning fire. "All the more reason," I said, getting closer, my voice trembling with anger and fear. "You know, my granddaughter is severely allergic to shrimp. A single piece could kill her." Leon turned pale, his eyes wide with horror, and shook his head frantically. "Sir, I really didn't know. I just followed the note. I had no idea about anything." His voice broke as if he too was trapped in this nightmare. The other waiters began to whisper among themselves, looking at each other with curiosity and concern. I squeezed the paper in my hand, feeling it burn my skin. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break everything, but I knew I couldn't let my emotions get the better of me. Jada was waiting for me, and I had to protect her. From inside the ballroom, the MC's voice cheerfully announced that they should get ready for the main course. His voice was like a cruel reminder that time was running out, and if I hesitated, a deadly trap could be waiting for Jada. I took a deep breath, trying to control the trembling in my body. I knew I couldn't stay silent. If I didn't act right now, I would never forgive myself. I returned to the ballroom with the paper still in my hand as irrefutable proof of a sinister plan. The ballroom was still flooded with candlelight, and the music of the jazz band mixed with the laughter of the guests. The waiters silently served the main courses, and the aroma of roasted meat and gravy filled the air. But for me, everything was a farce. I looked at Jada, huddled next to Tyrone, her clear eyes full of fear fixed on me as if I were her only refuge in the middle of the storm. I took Jada's little hand, feeling her trembling fingers in my palm. And then, as if driven by an invisible force, I stood up abruptly. My voice resonated clearly and firmly above the music and conversations. "One moment, please. Before we begin to eat, I have something to clarify." The whole ballroom fell silent as if time had stopped. All eyes were on table 8, where I was standing with Jada by my side, and Tyrone sitting with a spark of determination in his eyes. The clinking of glasses ceased, the murmurs died down, and I could only hear the pounding of my heart in my chest. I held up the paper. The words scribbled on it were an undeniable accusation. "Who wrote this paper asking for shrimp to be added to the food of the child at table 8? I asked, my voice trembling with indignation, but forcing it to be clear and sharp. Whispers began to be heard like small waves in a calm lake. Some guests looked at each other, shaking their heads with looks of curiosity and confusion. I felt Jada's gaze fixed on me as if she were begging me to do something to protect her. Kendra ran from the head table with a smile on her face that quickly turned to concern when she saw my expression. Dad, what's going on? She asked, completely bewildered. I didn't answer her immediately. I just put the paper on the table and pushed it towards her. Read it yourself, I said in a harsh voice, although inside I was a mess. Kendra took the paper. Her eyes scanned the words, and I saw her face turn pale and her hands tremble slightly. What does this mean? She asked, stunned, looking at me and then at Jada, as if searching for a logical explanation. Byron, in his expensive suit, approached, frowning with a perfectly feigned surprise. What is all this? Some kind of bad joke, Silas? He said in a soft voice, but I noticed a flash of panic in his eyes. I looked at him directly in the eyes, my heart gripped by anger and fear. My granddaughter is allergic to shrimp, I said, my voice trembling with indignation. This is not a joke. This is an attempt at murder. My words fell like thunder, plunging the ballroom into a deathly silence. Some guests' mouths dropped open in astonishment while others began to whisper, their eyes moving from me to Byron. Byron let out a forced laugh, a mask to maintain his composure. Excuse me, Silas, but there is no name on the paper. Are you going to believe a story that a child who found it made up? He said with a mocking tone, trying to make me look like a senile old man. Some guests began to comment doubtfully. Maybe it's a misunderstanding. Who would do something like that at a wedding? The blood boiled in my veins. Byron's audacity left me almost speechless. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear off that fancy suit to reveal the truth. But I knew I had to remain calm for Jada, for my family. Suddenly, Tyrone stood up, hugging Jada tightly, his eyes reddened and fixed on Byron. That's enough, Byron. His voice sounded cold but full of pain, as if he couldn't contain himself any longer. Tyrone stepped forward. He didn't hit him, but his presence was intimidating. The only wicked person here is you. You wanted to harm an innocent child at your own wedding. His words were like a knife that cut through the heavy air of the ballroom. The looks of doubt began to center on Byron, and I saw him freeze, his false smile fading. Kendra was motionless. Her gaze went from me to Tyrone and Byron, as if she were trapped between two worlds. Tyrone, calm down, she said in a trembling voice, but I knew she was no longer sure who to believe. The murmurs of the guests grew like a tide that carried all eyes toward me, toward Byron, and toward Jada, my little granddaughter, who was trembling in Tyrone's arms. Byron tried to maintain his false calm, but I saw his hands shake when he spoke. This is slander. I'm sure someone put that paper there to ruin our wedding. His voice was sharp, but I noticed the panic in his eyes, as if his perfect mask was starting to crack. I couldn't stand his audacity anymore. The anger inside me exploded like a fire that consumed all my patience. I hit the table hard, making the glasses shake. That's enough, I shouted in a voice so cold that it silenced even the music of the jazz band. Leon, come here. The young waiter, Leon, approached from a corner, his face pale with fear. His eyes darted from side to side as if he were trapped between the truth and the storm that was coming. I showed him the paper, my voice trembling but firm. Confirm it. Is this the paper you received? Leon nodded repeatedly, stammering. Yes, sir, it is. The groom gave it to me, and I accidentally dropped it when I was carrying the tray. He lowered his head as if he wanted to avoid my gaze. I felt my blood boil, but I forced myself to stay calm because I knew everyone in the ballroom was watching. Byron hurried to interrupt in a sharp, almost desperate voice. You're mistaken. I don't know anything about that. But before he could respond, a murmur of astonishment ran through the ballroom. My God, I can't believe it. How is that possible? A close older relative shook his head, his voice choked. How is it possible to not even spare an innocent child? In the midst of the chaos, Tyrone stepped forward, hugging Jada tightly, and said in an icy voice, if you keep denying it, we can ask to check the security cameras in the ballroom. Everything will be cleared up in a moment." Her words were like a stone thrown into a lake, causing waves of panic. Byron's face turned ashen, his lips tightened, and his gaze desperately sought an escape. But there was no escape now. He didn't say another word, and that silence for me was the clearest confession of all. Kendra froze, her hand trembling on Jada's shoulder, looking in horror at the man she had just called her husband. Her voice broke as if she were trying to cling to the hope that it was all a misunderstanding, but her gaze, moving from the paper to Jada, said it all. I saw how her heart broke, just like mine had when I discovered the plot. After Trayvon's challenge about the security cameras, a deadly silence took over the ballroom. Byron, the man I once tried to accept as part of my family, stood there, his face pale and his lips pressed together, looking for one last excuse. But the truth was exposed, and he had nowhere left to run. Kendra, my daughter, walked slowly toward him, her face tense and her eyes red, and asked him, "Byron, tell me the truth. Is it true?" Her voice trembled as if she were begging for a glimmer of hope that it was all a mistake. But I knew that deep down, she also felt the painful truth. Byron took a step back, trying to force a twisted smile, but his eyes betrayed his panic. "You don't believe me?" he said in a broken voice, as if trying to cling to the last drop of Kendra's trust. "It's all their plan. I didn't do anything." But his words sounded weak, like a wind about to die out before a storm. I looked at him, my heart heavy with indignation and pain. This man I thought would bring my daughter happiness was now standing in front of me like a stranger, a danger I hadn't seen before. Trayvon put a hand on Kendra's shoulder and said in a voice he was holding back with all his might, "Jada almost died because of this man." His words were as sharp as a knife. Byron yelled desperately, "Shut up. You're just a jealous intruder." But Trayvon didn't move. He was trembling with rage, but stood firm like a shield for Jada. "How dare you call me jealous?" Trayvon responded in an icy voice. "Look this child in the eyes and tell me you didn't try to hurt her." Jada clung to me, her little hand squeezing mine as if she feared being dragged into that nightmare. The guests began to stand up. The festive atmosphere had completely broken. A relative of our family, Mr. Johnson, hit the table with anger. "This is a disgrace. We can't let this go." Murmurs of support were heard like waves that grew and drowned Byron in everyone's looks of contempt. Kendra, trapped between truth and love, cried out, her voice broken with pain and indignation. "Jada is my daughter. You tried to kill my daughter at our own wedding." Her words were like a direct stab to Byron's heart, and I saw him burst into tears. But those tears, I knew, were not of repentance, but of being discovered. I placed the paper on the table and declared in a firm voice, "Anyone who tries to harm my granddaughter will never have the right to set foot in this family." My words resonated clear and unyielding, like a sentence. Byron looked up, his eyes full of fire, but I saw defeat in his gaze. He had lost not only to me, but to the truth. The hotel security personnel approached and in a polite but firm manner asked Byron to leave the ballroom. "Sir, please come with us," one of them said in a cold voice. Byron backed away looking for help, but no one sided with him. Many guests shook their heads, leaving their half-empty glasses and sighing with resignation. "Unbelievable," one whispered. "How can someone be so cruel?" Another said, horrified. Kendra stood motionless, her hands on her head as if trying to keep her world from collapsing. Then, as if she no longer had the strength to stand, she slowly knelt in front of Jada, her voice choked, "Baby, forgive me. Forgive me for not protecting you." I saw tears run down her cheeks, and I felt my heart break in two. I helped Kendra get up, squeezing her shoulders, and said in a grave but confident voice, "Luckily, we stopped it in time. This false happiness has to end here and now." I looked at Byron, who was being escorted out amidst looks of contempt, and in my heart, I knew that he never was and never would be a part of this family. In the days that followed that nightmare wedding, My family was caught in a silent whirlwind where wounds still bled and unanswered questions floated in the air. I felt as if I had just woken up from a nightmare in which I almost lost Jada, my granddaughter, whom I love more than life itself. The story of the failed wedding spread everywhere, from the small suburban streets to the conversations of distant relatives. The house phone wouldn't stop ringing. Some blamed Kendra for blindly trusting Byron. Others sympathized with Jada, the innocent child who was almost the victim of an evil plot. But for me, every call was just a painful reminder of what we had gone through. Kendra became withdrawn after what happened. She was no longer the radiant woman in the white dress from the wedding day. Instead, she would take Jada to and from school in silence every day, her gaze filled with pain and guilt. The name Byron, like a curse, was never mentioned in the house again. I looked at Kendra with a pained heart, but I knew she needed time to heal, to find herself after being betrayed by the person she loved. I didn't blame her because I understand that love can get to people. But I also knew that our family had to rise from the ashes. I continued to care for Jada as I had since Jerome left. I cooked her favorite dishes like gumbo or peach cobbler, trying to give her back a sense of security. But who really healed Jada's soul? It wasn't me, but Tyrone, my adopted son. Every morning, he would carefully prepare her lunch for school, carefully choosing foods without shrimp or anything that could put her in danger. He would even write a little note for the teacher explaining Jada's allergy along with a smiling face drawn with a crayon which she loved. "Uncle Tyrone, you draw so well," Jada would exclaim when she opened her lunchbox, and I would see her eyes light up as if a part of her innocence had returned. Every afternoon, Tyrone would take Jada to the nearby park. I used to watch them from a distance, seeing how he taught her to fly a kite, showing her how to hold the string so it would fly high. Once Jada fell off the slide, and Tyrone ran to her, picked her up, brushed the dust off her clothes, and whispered, "It's okay, little bit. I'm here." Jada's clear laughter echoed, a sound I thought I had lost forever, and which was now like a balm for my heart. I looked at Tyrone with infinite gratitude because he was not only a brother to her but also like a second father filling the void that Jerome had left. One night when Jada had a high fever, I saw Tyrone spend the night by her side. He sat on a chair next to the bed placing damp cloths on her forehead while he quietly told her the story of a brave lion that protected his pride. I stood at the door watching in silence, and I realized that Kendra's gaze followed Tyrone for a long time. It was a complex look, full of gratitude and remorse, as if she was realizing something she had ignored for a long time. I didn't say anything. I just retreated in silence, giving them their space. But in my heart, I began to hope that maybe there was a light at the end of our family's dark tunnel. One night during one of the rare dinners where we were all sitting together around the table with the warm food I had prepared, Jada suddenly looked up, her clear eyes fixed on Tyrone. "I want Uncle Tyrone to be my daddy," she said in a soft but clear voice as if it were something she had been thinking about for a long time. Everyone at the table fell silent. Tyrone looked down, gripping the spoon as if to hide his emotion. Kendra froze with teary eyes as if Jada's words had touched a very deep chord in her heart. I smiled. I put my hand on Kendra's shoulder and said in a warm voice, "True happiness, daughter, doesn't come from a flashy wedding, but from a sincere heart that knows how to love." Kendra looked at me, then at Tyrone, and I saw a small spark of hope shine in her eyes. Time passed and Byron disappeared completely from our lives like a toxic wind that had gone. Jada became a happy girl again, always stuck to Tyrone with her doll and the drawings he made for her. I saw her running and playing in the yard, feeling a great relief, but also a pang of pain, thinking about everything she had to go through. One day, Kendra took Tyrone's hand. She suddenly stood in front of me in the living room and said in a trembling but firm voice, "Dad, I know I made a mistake. I was blind. I put Jada in danger. But this time, I don't want to let go of the person who has truly been by our family's side." Tyrone smiled, a radiant smile on his lips. I nodded as tears silently rolled down my cheeks. "Daughter, the only thing I want is for you and Jada to be happy," I said in a choked voice. That night, after Jada fell asleep, I sat by the window, watching the silver moon that stretched over the quiet street. Its soft light was like a reminder that although our family had gone through dark days, light always finds a way to break through. I whispered to myself, family isn't always made of blood ties. Sometimes it's chosen with love and courage. After that grim wedding, a new chapter full of light had truly begun for my family. I looked toward the yard where the kite that Tyrone and Jada had flown the day before was still there. And I knew that although the old wounds might never fully heal, we would continue on together with love and strength as our support. After going through all this, I understood something very important. That in life there are losses that cannot be replaced, betrayals that break the heart, but sincere love will always be the light that illuminates the way. Family is not only built with blood ties, but also with choices, with the courage to protect each other from darkness and danger. It is sacrifice and true affection that brings lasting happiness, not false appearances. I want everyone to remember to listen. You have to let your heart guide you because sometimes a small gesture of attention can save a life. And it is kindness that gets us out of nights that seem to have no end. Did you like my story? I have a few questions for you before we go. If you were in my shoes, standing there as a grandfather, knowing someone tried to hurt your innocent grandchild, what would you have done? Would you have kept your cool, or would you have torn that place apart? I truly want to know your opinion, so leave it in the comments below. Also, I love seeing how far these stories travel. Tell me, where are you watching this video from? Drop your city or country in the comments. I try to read every single one. And if you enjoyed this story and believe in protecting family, please hit that like button, subscribe to Uncle Tyrone's Chronicles, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story. I've left another powerful video on the screen for you right now. It's one you definitely don't want to miss. Click on it, and I'll see you there. Peace.